Hey everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name is Sarah Barnes Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, Blended, and the Secret Society of Supply Chain. And I'm collaborating once again with the fabulous team at Polaris. So last month, CEO Dave Cox joined me over on Let's Talk Supply Chain to give us the inside scoop on Polaris. We talked about how and why the organization was founded 30 years ago and where they are right now. We also talked about their approach to technology, communication, embracing change, and so much more. So if you want to find out more about Polaris, which I'm sure you will after today's discussion, go and check out that episode over on letstalksupplychain.com. Now, something we also talked about during that episode were the complex challenges of cross-border trade and the importance of digitization. So embracing cross-border markets is an increasingly important element of many organizations' growth strategies. I mean, according to Statista, global cross-border e-commerce sales are projected to reach $4.8 trillion just this year. And that's representing an incredible potential that brands want to take advantage of. But are they set up to do that successfully? Well, many facets of our industry are still pretty outdated, with a considerable percentage of organizations still relying on Excel to manage their supply chain operations. Throw in a lack of qualified workers, organizational silos, and near constant disruption, and organizations have a lot of obstacles in the way before they can ride that cross-border growth train to success. But you'll be pleased to hear that those obstacles are not insurmountable. And Richard and Dave of Polaris are here to tell you why. They're going to talk about the power of digitization when it comes to cost, customer experience, and collaboration. And they're going to share how working with the right provider can help organizations scale to that success that I just mentioned. So Richard and Dave, welcome to the show. Can you both introduce yourselves? Let us know what you do at Polaris.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Richard Cuno. I'm the president of the Polaris Transportation Group.
Awesome. Dave.
Thanks, Sarah. Dave Breakovich. I'm the Chief Technical Officer for Polaris Transportation Group of companies, and I also run our internal software development team for North Star Digital Solutions.
Great. I can't wait to hear more about that. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, cross-border e-commerce is growing rapidly, right? The figures are, at $4.8 trillion. Those are some really big numbers. And so lots of organizations are excited about what this growth and evolution is going to bring for business, but also for the industry. So, Richard, I want to start with you. How have you seen the industry change? What's behind those changes? And what have been the key drivers from your perspective?
Yeah, it's really been amazing. And having been at this for many, many years, it's incredible to see that at one point we were offshoring everything. Then COVID hit. And since then, it's been a race to nearshore. And the other part that has now stepped in, that's just incredible. Two big parts. Technology has made how we conduct business an absolute game changer. And the other thing that's so subtle, and I don't think people appreciate it, is what I call the Amazon effect. Everybody now thinks everything they consume is an impulse item. And I share the joke very fondly, but play hockey and a bunch of folks, chit-chatting before the game, and somebody ordered a lawnmower and complaining it wasn't going to deliver for 3 days. Well, the joke was, first of all, he waited 5 years to get the lawnmower, but all of a sudden now he was upset it wasn't arriving in 3 days. And then the real joke was he wasn't going to cut the lawn for 2 weeks anyway. So, but that Amazon effect is so critical because everything has been turned into an impulse. We no longer have a planned purchase or a pantry item. Everything's an impulse. So if you're not doing it fast enough for your clients, your customers, you're not in the game right now. And cost can't deliver that impulse demand.
It's so true. I think I almost made an impulse item purchase 3 times this weekend. And I think I did 1 out of the 3. So I completely get it, because before it would have been like, oh, well, it's baseball season. I don't need a glove just yet. I'll wait till off season. But I kind of wanted the new glove this weekend. Anyways, Dave, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I'm right in line with all of you. Impulse buying has become a very trendy process, and certainly technology has added that framework to all of us, and really has set the expectation in a very high level that you just get online and basically order, and now the expectations are even greater because you need it and want it now, and
Absolutely.
here at the door. I think as you know, the evolution of technology is growing, and of course expectations becoming higher. What I'm seeing is the commercial freight business is very much coupling to the public shipping expectations, and there's not a differentiator. It is getting tighter and tighter. And for the transportation companies that, let's say, are still using Excel spreadsheets, it's going to be a tougher haul to get to the next level.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely seeing the requirements in the transportation industry becoming a higher process, and almost now a table stake to drive,
Yeah.
increased growth and volumes
Yeah.
as you're going. So those lawnmowers, they need to go quick. Well, basically, if you're going to move them on commercial freight, trucking companies, the technology needs to be there so you can get it within the day before your grass gets so long that that lawnmower needs to be changed out for another one.
True, true. And pardon the pun on the haul comment.
Yeah, that's right.
I just had to say that. I mean, you said haul, I had to bring that
I
in.
do. I use that word quite often. So it used to
For
be rubber meets the road, but now it's all.
for for all of you that are listening and watching, we are going to get to your questions. So make sure if you do have any questions, put them in the comments because we're going to get to those a little bit later. But we also want to know where you're watching from. So put in the comments where you're watching from. And if you had a recent impulse item, let us know what that is. Now, Richard, I'm going to start with you again. What does the cross-border environment look like right now?
Yeah, it's as I said, it has really changed. I think if you go back a few years, there was a lot of manufacturing within Canada, within America, and with Mexico. The three countries now literally have become a superpower trading bloc, and it's the first time I've seen it at this scale in my lifetime. It truly has never been a more exciting time to be in the transportation industry LTL. And I say LTL because things are not so good for FTL right now because folks don't have to order 180 cans from China 15 months ahead. They can have it made somewhere in North America, order 5 skids, and order it only with an 8-week lead time. So the environment has really changed, and all three governments are doing their best to get ahead of the trade and commerce crossing the borders.
Yeah, especially when we're looking at manufacturing in new places like Mexico, I've heard of a lot more recently. Dave, do you have anything to add to where we are right now in cross-border?
Yeah, absolutely. Cross-border has made significant changes over the years. Certainly, I always compare it to actually moving people. Freight has more documents. When I first entered this space 6 years ago, and digitizing some of this too as well, but coming through and trying to recognize to move a piece of freight, you probably got a stack of papers that are basically as heavy as the freight that they're moving. So how do we minimize that impact on labor forces? And it's been tremendous how much labor is actually needed to move, a skid or a pallet across borders. Now, the borders are also allowing more change to technology, adding API structures, more, enhanced EDI capabilities. And I think the ones that are going to be very successful, including Polaris, is the ability to automate a lot of that straight through processing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in some of the further analysis and details as we go through. But I'm seeing a massive change for the ability to speed the process through, and of course due diligence, making sure that you're adhering to policies. The borders still need to process their safety measures, but then again, it doesn't need to be overly complex. It can be simplified by the management of proper tools, proper policies, and proper structure.
Yeah. So let's get into that, Richard. How does Polaris fit into where we are right now? How are you changing the cross-border landscape?
Yeah, we're operating on a couple of different levels. Number one, first and foremost, security is crucial.
Oh, yeah.
We're in a different world. We're in
Mhm.
a very different world than when we were busy. Everybody was busy offshoring. So security, we've made massive investments in security across the board. The other thing we've done is we've invested, and Dave alluded to it, obviously, technology. It's almost a cliche, but technology is so critical. There's just too much variation to deal with, and the governments are still governments, and they want to make sure that whatever you're moving across the border is clear and cleaned through. And lastly, you have to do that in order to protect the speed of the flow of goods. If you don't, you're just not going to be able to play in the game, as I said earlier.
Yeah, so many rules and regulations that we've got to keep on top of. I don't know how you're going to do that without technology. So let's talk about how the industry is going to continue to change, right? Because I know this is key to Polaris's vision, but why is embracing change in what is sometimes seen as a bit of an outdated industry, right? Why is that so important, Richard?
I'm laughing because I feel like I started at the beginning of it, but driving a clutch forklift on a night shift a long, long time ago. But anyhow, the funny part is, and Dave alluded to it, it hasn't changed. To move anywhere in North America right now, to move a trailer across the road, you need a half an inch of paper. It's really incredible that all this time I can fly one of my boys around the planet with a QR code, but yet I can't move an empty trailer across the road. The industry, for me, as I look at it, the industry is super fragmented. But the exciting part is technology and digitization and automation is going to drive an incredible amount of commerce and trade. And it's going to help the industry to normalize how it evolves. Because simply being able to say you can hire a driver now, some of that's starting to get into the fringe of the commodity world. So guess what? You got to have something more to offer.
Mhm.
And for those willing to change, technology platforms will normalize the industry and allow it to advance itself. But also, you don't have to have 1,000 power units. You can have 5 and still be very competitive and very successful.
Yeah, really bringing efficiency to that table. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the rigors of making sure documentation is set and the process to adhere to a lot of these things. And remember entering the space here at Polaris 6 years ago, but time flies and when you're having fun. Certainly, the rigors of doing that, and I'll recall Dave Cox, our CEO, looking at the people's jobs that they were having to do. We had 35 people just handling documents over and over and over again, copy paste, nose to the grindstone per se, but it's the keyboard these days. He said to me, he says, I've got to digitize this process. There's got to be a better way for my people to do smarter and better things than actually, copy and paste. If I had to do this 24/7, I wouldn't want to work here.
Right.
Right. And so one of the things that was a challenge, and he threw the gauntlet down and we worked through it. And there are tools out there today that are improving. We use something called robotic process automation and machine learning to digitize our document processing. So when we look at it, it's like at home, right? If you've got to take and do something on a regular basis and it's really mundane, making a coffee would be nice if you just told the coffee machine, hey, make me coffee, right? So, hey, and that you could do that today, right? And it's not as expensive as it was. Well, nowadays you can actually process documents with these, intelligent bots that can actually read the document, set the pace. We call it straight through processing. We're now managing 80% of our documents. When COVID hit us and we had to move people offline, 80% of our business still continued. Well, that's a massive impact for our customers to make sure that their freight is crossing the border. Our brokers and shippers and clients, they care, but they don't care. They are sending us a piece of freight. They expect it to
do
the
it.
border. We got, we've got the process. We're the experts. We are going to make it happen, and we're going to make it happen overnight so that you don't have to worry. We're bringing the borders closer together by doing that process. And through the digitization process, we've actually been able to process that without hands touching it for the most part. But again, expectation or exceptions happen. And this is where the bots work in a smart way, or I'd say maybe a non-smart way, is look, I can't figure this information out. You didn't teach me how to do this. So you take care of this, you fix it. And so our people are actually making those changes, but they're using their intelligence. So I phrase something called boosting human intelligence with artificial intelligence, because we're not at the Terminator stage yet.
Right. But the exceptions management piece is super important, right? And that's where we need to make sure that we are watching out for that. Now, I want to say hi to Mayor and Charlene over from Toronto and Napanee on my personal LinkedIn for joining us today. So as we talk about that change and how the industry is moving forward, it brings with it a lot of opportunities, which I think you've alluded to, right? I'm personally excited about the possibility of opening up new markets for small and medium-sized businesses. But I think also embracing cross-border markets really brings potential success really for everybody. So let's talk about those opportunities. I mean, me sitting in Canada, I want to be able to buy things cross-border and I want to be able to do it easily. And I don't, like you said, I don't really want to know what's happening in the background. I just want to know that it's going to get delivered to my door.
Right.
So Dave, let's start with you. What do you see as the main opportunities broadly across the market?
Broadly across the market, again, opportunities that arise is bringing borders closer together, right? We are in North America. We travel across, we're neighbors, we're friends. We still want to make sure things are properly and safely managed. Again, bringing that courier shipping experience into commercial freight is super important, and it's tied in. So again, let's go through an example. You buy something in the United States that you cannot get here. It could be coming in from China, it could be coming in from Mexico. You don't really care. You saw the product, there's a supplier, you're gonna tap the button, ship it to me. Here's my cart, away I go. Within, let's say right now our expectations are within a minute or less, you've got a product that says, hey, thank you for your order, Sarah. It's on its way, right? And what's your expectation? You want a shipping label or a confirmation immediately,
Tracking
right? I get nervous when I don't get one, and and the first thing I want to do is poke someone and say, hey, where's my where's my confirmation? When it comes, we're all excited. We get these great notifications, and if we think about it, technology has brought us so into devices that when we get a message, and sometimes even more importantly, that getting a message from a loved one, we'd rather see, hey, our shipment notification has come up. Where is it? So now we're excited, and that's what we're bringing to the table as well, notifying our customers. Shipments have cleared, even though you may not, really care, but it's moving. The other thing in the aspect of it is, hey, we've got, customs brokers that do great work behind the scenes, and sometimes they're not recognized, but they're moving freight for us with the clearances, making sure customs information is all done, costs are taken care of. And at the end of the day, you're a satisfied customer. You are getting your shipment. And if we look at the trucking industry during COVID, the heroes of the highways, which are our drivers, they were making things happen. They were putting food on the table, medicine, diapers, all of those great things. And they were moving across border. So how do we make that, and I can see this in a broad way for the future, is how do we make that as seamless as we can for the end customer? Because I think, if I want to make a change, I was in healthcare where, I think it was really critical. It was a high stress job, especially in lab diagnostics, because you're dealing with human lives. Well, transportation is just as needy as shipment and freight is just as needy. So again, it's not, life or death, but it could be. If you're waiting on medicine or if you're doing something, you've got to treat it that way. And the way Polaris focuses on it is how do we enhance the customer experience, and what tools and what processes can we do to enhance not only the customer experience, but our own staff members internally.
Well, and also their customers too. So Richard, I want to bring you into the conversation. Talk to me about what you're seeing your customers doing specifically. What are they excited about? What opportunities are they looking to pursue?
Yeah, I just bobbed my head. It was like, no, I'm not on the news. But all kidding aside, it's interesting again, if you look at how the behavior's changed. what do the customers want? Well, they absolutely want track and trace. Again, I call that the Amazon effect. Everybody's busy figuring out where something is, and they're excited about their purchase, whether it's industrial or personal, commercial, doesn't really matter. Our customers, they want and demand speed to market. I can't emphasize that enough, because they're fighting. If they don't fill that click and buy, well, maybe somebody else will, right? You're fighting for the spend of every client and customer out there. So you've got to walk in those shoes and understand that sense of urgency and have that bias for action. And the last thing that I've seen emerge that to me is really striking is everything I just said. You better add in white glove service. You better add in that extra touch. Make sure that there's a protective cone put on top of the pallet to indicate don't double stack. Have an extra follow-up call with the client. That is so important because that's the part that the robots can't do and don't do very well. So adding in that white glove service to truly acknowledge the importance of every transaction. And as Dave said, there are some shipments that go through that are critical. But on the flip side, everything that you're buying or you're moving is critical to you. So everything's important in that context.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true. I think of myself while we're talking about this. I think of myself as the consumer, right? And what is it that I do on a regular basis when I'm looking at buying something? I mean, just this weekend, I think I went to 3 or 4 different websites to buy something. And some, the shipping prices were like $35, which was going to take the cost of the product way higher than I wanted to pay. And so, I looked at the different options and the different options that were available to me on different websites. And that's what people are doing on a regular basis. What are the GSTs and duties that they have to pay on this side? Is the retailer taking care of that? Right? Do I have to get it shipped to Canada? Can I ship it to the US? All of these different things. So everybody has lots of options at their fingertips. And if you don't have a cross-border supply chain that's really robust and gives them those options, and you're not working with the right partners, it can get really scary very quickly because they're going to go somewhere else. So Dave, talking about that, when you're scaling sustainably, successfully, I mean, that's a really big focus for a lot of organizations. What are the benefits that scaling cross-border can bring?
So, well, immense. You just talked a little bit about your own personal consumer needs. And I think we all should put that hat on because we work as, a shipper would, right? A shipper, if you think, within a manufacturing company or a distribution company, wears a hat that's very serious. They're looking for cost reductions. They're looking for transparency. They're looking for service. And again, shopping. So the scalability there, back to your point, is there are a lot of companies out there today that, from a brokerage perspective, they're tying in, including Polaris, they're asking for APIs constantly now, right? The way of EDI is going the way of the dodo. And I think transportation has to wake up and move towards that. One thing that's really super important in order to scale, the commercial freight business needs good data, good information from their customers, right? What's happened and is still happening sometimes in the legacy world, well, I just want a quick quote. So I'm just going to give you a postal from here to here. As a consumer, you can't do that. With a courier service, again, you want accuracy of pricing. So if you just say, listen, go from this postal to that postal, well, someone's just going to give you a very base quote. And then at the end of the day, when you put your real address in, they're going to say, well, sorry, Sarah, it's $60 more.
Right.
Because, whatever. So there's collaboration that needs to happen and some standardization, which I find transportation is still not in that mode, right? There's too much flaky standards or options. Well, listen, these guys won't do it this way, so I'm just going to go somewhere else. Right. Well, you know what? You may drop the price expectations, or you may drop, delivery service, all of those things. So again, great data. I always say this quote from the old Spider-Man days: with great power comes great responsibility. And it goes both ways, right? Technology is just the same. Technology is dumb until humans put their smarts into it. And in order to scale, you've got to have some black and white, right? But the gray matter, it needs to be handled by humans. And so we can only be as good as the process is. And I think that needs to be enhanced. And I think transportation companies are recognizing this along with supply chain. we've got to give a better service out there to the shippers, to the brokers. But in reciprocation, they need to also be able to correspond with technology, bring up their level, give the information. And as Polaris does, we're very transparent. We will give you the right information if we have the right information to give you back. So if you're looking at shopping and you're saying, well, listen, hey, the border fees are this, fuel surcharges are these, I'm sending this to a school, I need a lift gate. So, things that we can answer questions as long as we have the right information. So garbage in, garbage out, let's keep it clean.
And I like that quote when it comes to data. And it's really funny because you're dealing with technology right now. I think you've got turn on, turn off lights.
I know. Can you see my hand going, hey, clap on, clap off?
So good. So good. All right. I am excited about all the opportunities because, again, I don't think every organization that's doing cross-border is doing it necessarily well. And I talk to a lot of companies in the US that want to come to Canada, but don't really understand the ins and outs and how they can best do it. But with opportunities really come with challenges. And all across supply chain, we are seeing challenges. And so, Richard, what are some of the big challenges that you're seeing in the industry when it comes to embracing those cross-border markets? Like I said, there's a lot of US companies that want to come to Canada. There's a lot of Canadians who want to buy from some US companies, and they just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's really amazing that we're all neighbors, but yet it all seems so far away, and truly the distances are great. But there's a couple of really exciting parts to this. First of all, the amount of information that's available to allay any fears or concerns is truly incredible at this time, in this journey of trade. So getting things from point A to point B, you don't have to even figure out, how do I get the postal code or the zip code? You can get all that information. The technology allows for seamless border transactions, so you don't have to worry about that. It's really just identifying, and I don't want to say really, but identify who's trying to buy your product, and then, there's some great ways to move it. There's something that Dave said earlier, and you kind of alluded to it as well, Sarah, and that is that the reality, though, and that's one of the more subtle, daunting parts when it comes to trade, is that with the nearshoring, it's also created more variation in the amount of demand that occurs. Because you said, well, I was looking at one item, and before I know it, I was at 3 or 4 websites, and I was going to buy one. Or I start off wanting to buy one item, but maybe I decided to do 5. One of the subtle things that's happened with nearshoring is that the amount of variation that can occur in the orders is quite significant, because somebody says, oh, okay, now that we're shipping from Nashville to Toronto, well, why don't we now, we'll put in 4 more orders that we're going to process in a week from now. So you've been working on 1 order, but in fact, 5 are now going to move, but tomorrow there will be 0. So the shorter the distance, very simply, the greater the variation. And the only way you get through that is to get the technology platform in behind the scenes to help you modulate that and get the data then to analyze where you put your capacity in, so you're not disappointing anybody.
Absolutely. Dave?
Sorry, just to jump in, some of the challenges, and you talked about challenges. So challenges to cross-border, first of all, you want to keep it as seamless as possible. What we've seen is, turnaround times to clear freight used to be, before we implemented a lot of our technology components and let's call them integrated them, we would struggle at times to basically clear freight. So in an LTL environment, or less than truckload, we don't have a full truckload. Well, we try to fill our trucks. But, from a customer's perspective, look, I don't care if you're filling your truck or not. This is LTL. So Sarah orders, 10 pallets of tires, right? You don't care if Richard has ordered 20 of his stuff and Dave's got, 60 of his. Well, we care as Polaris because we want to maximize our trucks. However, if we've got a problem with Richard's clearance, because our driver is too long or he didn't send us the information, our truck will be stopped at the border. And guess what, Sarah? Your product's not moving. Well, you don't really care about that, and neither does Dave. So Polaris is on the hook. We take accountability and responsibility to make sure that now with our coupled technology, we can clear freight within minutes. So while our driver's on the road, right, we try to avoid those challenges. We want to try and get that clearance as soon as we can, so that Sarah, Dave, and Richard, they're happy campers, because guess what? Our truck is moving through to Chicago tonight with all your goods, and it's going to be Christmas time as soon as you get all your presents. So
That's, you know what, that's a really big point there, because I used to be in consolidation when I worked in the freight forwarder logistics side of things, whether it was consolidation on the ocean freight, consolidation on cross border. And a lot of times it only took one shipment on that whole entire container or truck that would hold up everything for everybody else. And it would also result in extra charges, right? That everybody would potentially have to pool together and pay for. But it's really that time. And with the Amazon effect that Richard was talking about earlier, we don't have that luxury of time anymore. We need to rely on our partners, our transportation partners, to make sure that they have everything they need so this truck does not get hung up by one shipment.
yeah.
And so that's a huge point there, Dave. Thanks for sharing that. What else are customers struggling with, Richard?
There, I think at the end of the day, I think everybody's a little concerned about some of the border policies and politics. The reality is speed across the border, as you just said, is so critical and nobody wants to be delayed. But there's a lot of economic policies right now across the board, in Mexico, Canada, and America that don't necessarily help trade to move quickly or cleanly. I will say at times it feels like we can move stuff faster, and I've heard this reported a number of times, north and south, than we can even provincially. So within Canada, so that tells you something. But the other part of it is that to me is really important is that the policies aren't aligned. So I hope in the future there is an ability to align them. And a simple example of that is moving things in bond. You can move things in bond from America into Canada, and it doesn't hold up the trailer, but you can't do that going into America for all kinds of reasons. So hopefully in the future, the governments are able to work that through.
And if you think of the impact on the driver itself too, as well, I think that's the vein of Dave Cox's existence as a CEO. He gets so tense about even one or two drivers getting stuck at the border because it's not their fault. They were relying on us to make sure that things were clear, right? So as a team, we work together. And then, of course, as you can think, if the driver is stuck, now we got to find a place for him to stay, and park the truck properly, and just causes just the ripple effect, as they call it, right? So those are things I think that are very key and important, is to make sure, and Polaris does, I think, an extremely good job. I like to pound my chest, others don't, but I would say we're the best border crossing commercial freight LTL company in Canada that moves things across the border, because I think, as we even had results coming back, is we could see even a client had called us one day, or called our CEO Dave and said, "Did you add an extra shift to your team?" And he said, "No." He says, "Well, I sent you a piece of freight on Saturday and it was cleared." He says, "That's my bots going to work in the back end." So again, we need information. Things are moving, right?
Well, and that's the other part of it too, is that freight it does not stop moving for anything or anybody. And you're talking about the weekend, right? Not everybody wants to work the weekend. And I know previously, being in this industry, people would be in there 24 hours a day. You'd have morning shift, night shift, round the clock shifts, so that we could clear things into the country or out of the country, and so many things, and nobody wants to work weekends. So if we can do it and not have to work weekends, I think that that's a win. Now, Mayor, I see your question, and I will get to that a little bit later. Just want to let you know, and everybody else who's out there, get your questions ready, put them in the comments. I want to see them so that we can get to those a little bit later. One last question on challenges, though. With all of these challenges, right? We've talked about a number of them. How are your customers prioritizing these challenges? Like, which ones are they going to tackle first? It's kind of like technology, right? Which process are we going to tackle first to make more efficient? Richard, I'm going to ask you that question.
Yeah, this is really interesting, because at any given point, it's service. At any given point, it's cost. And at any given point, it's driving more growth. At the end of the day, it's all three at once. Our customers want service. They want the best cost possible, lowest cost possible, and they want everything we're doing white glove and driving growth. And I think the reality is with LTL, you have to find a way to do that, or you can't play in it. And we know LTL is going to grow. So you need to build that foundation of technology that, like you just said, allows you to clear that freight at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and still be in business and keep moving and be ready for when the trucks are rolling.
Well, and also that means that the driver can get home to their family and spend Sunday with their family, right? So I think there are multiple different reasons for this to happen. And so let's dive a little bit deeper onto digitizing the industry and why it's so important, because we've touched on technology. Dave, you've done a really great job of bringing that into the conversation. But let's dive into it more because it's going to help with so many different things. So, Dave, why is digitizing this industry so important? And then talk to me about the role that digitization has played in Polaris's successful growth over the last 30 years.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a really a great question, and it's very broad, right? So I'll focus in a little bit of what we concentrated on. One was within transportation, I think where it was crucial, and it's still a very much focal point. And let's face it, the road is the office, and the road, the assets, the drivers, critical to transportation companies, and that's the focal point, I think, because that brings in revenue, that brings the product to the customer, and all of those good things. But let's not forget the administrative efforts is monumental on the back end, and it just keeps growing. So the more freight you're moving, the more assets you can put on the road. Those are wonderful things. The problem is you need that much more administrative framework in the back end. You've got billing, you've got PODs, you got BOLs, and I can go on. So every time you're scaling, and one of the issues we had was we had to ramp up people. And it's not a bad thing because we don't want people losing their jobs. We want them to have jobs, but we want them to have smart jobs. And so the administrative efforts that we had to line was huge. And then, of course, the disappointment is when things slow down, now you got to scale backwards, and now you're relieving people of their job and uncertainty and all of that other stuff. So with digitization, what it helped us do, and I talked about it, was how do you manage or make straight through processing an evolution where systems can talk to systems. A lot of transportation companies have multiple systems available. They have email, which is probably the biggest and best Microsoft tool they've ever built. Excel and email, right? Everybody uses it. But how do you integrate that now to truck management systems, right, on the back end? Because those are crucial. You need finance, right? You need all these aspects of the business, which are not different from others in the business world, right? We all have the same problems and issues. So we wanted to digitize those, let's say, mundane processes, heavy labor, and now let the bots do the system-to-system processing. We've seen some immense improvements, and I'm talking some huge capacity gains within our own walls. And I told Dave Cox that hopefully with our North Star Digital Solutions group, where we're a little bit different from everybody else, we have an IT company that's focused on R&D and the next level. I don't deal with operational issues necessarily because you sync. Richard keep me busy 24/7, but I got to say, back off, Richard, because guess what? Microsoft has moved from Windows Platform 5 to like 11. So anyway, we're great partners on that regards, and he's very open, but the digitization process is super important because don't catch up and you're not current. First of all, you've got security issues at the end of the day, and we've seen many people and companies falter, and I'm not going to name any here because I don't want to put them on the spotlight, but you could read the news. We don't want to be in that situation. So we've invested in that. We've tied in our integrations. They're huge. So don't change your truck maintenance system in the back end necessarily. You don't need to incur that cost. You can integrate, right? Again, APIs, massive. And think about how to put those digital advantages, because guess what? At the end of the day, they're assets to your company. They are assets. They are like a truck. You've got all of this data that needs to be regurgitated and given back. So that's what we've done. And certainly from that perspective, we want security to be tight. We want to make sure that our people are doing jobs that are really, let's face it, human beings, we like to firefight, right? We get the swirl effect. You can be doing a straight through process all day long, and then an issue comes up and you spend 10 hours on it and everything else is done, right? So this is where we've made those changes, and I think this is where the game changer for transportation is happening. So again, I think these API connections, there's just so much software out there, it can get very confusing, but you have to look inwards and say, what are my gaps today? What are things that I could utilize and really make a difference for my people? And again, we thought about bringing the road to the back office.
Right.
How do we tie those two together? And I'll talk a little bit about that in a use case scenario, but
which I do want to get to, because we still have a lot of stuff to cover. So, but I love that you talked about security, because I have been going to a lot of conferences and everybody's talking about cybersecurity and what that means to not only themselves, but also their partners and things like that. So I'd love to hear that. But then also you mentioned the tech stack, right? Everybody's got so much technology doing so many different things. Are we using it to its fullest potential? And everybody's tech stack seems to be growing and growing and growing. So let's talk about customer experience and get to that case study, that use case, because I think that that's going to be important to bring it all together. So let's do that. But first of all, I want to focus on customer experience, because that is a really big part of this discussion as well, because it's not only the customer experience that you're providing to your customer, it's also the customer experience that they're providing to their customer, which could be a consumer like me. So Richard, why is it so important to really understand the needs of your customer and your customer's customer?
Well, to build a little bit on what Dave said, the evolution that's occurred is we used to have tools to do our job and roles, whatever you want to call it, but now the technology has quietly become the backbone of how you conduct your whole business model. Mm-hmm. And everything you're touching is no longer an adjunct. But that said, when it comes to the customer, they already expect that. But now you really need to understand what they're trying to do and really where they're trying to take their business. And right. It's not even enough just to ask some questions. You almost need to embed yourself. And we do that regularly, where we'll spend time with our clients to understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish, because you can't get that through a little conversation. You're going to see something very subtle by walking on a dock, looking at the manufacturing process, how items are inventoried, how they're picked and packed. That's really the crucial part then to come back. And then that's where we have this insatiable appetite to go back to Dave Breakovich and say, Dave, we need this to happen and we need it now. And Dave goes, yeah, but you just gave me 10 other priorities. Well, that's where Dave comes in and helps us to adjudicate a bit. But that's really the critical part. It's really understanding what the client needs and then working it through, and their customer as well. Back to the Amazon effect.
Well, and you're looking at it from a few different standpoints, right? You're looking at it as a transportation partner, but then you're also looking at it from a technology standpoint as well, on how you can best enhance that. What are some of the questions that you think people should be asking or understanding of their client? Richard?
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I look for a lot is what is repetitive. And if the work, and Dave alluded to it earlier, if the work or the activities are repetitive, where and what's the best way to get in some technology to manage it, to stabilize it, pull people out. And I didn't say let them go. I said pull people out so you can redeploy them on the white glove service elements that, frankly, folks find much more interesting to do and more enjoyable. And then you forge those relationships that everybody is looking for.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to the technology side and the case study. Dave, I think you've got something to share with us. We're going to pull it up on screen. Talk to us about what does technology look like when you're enhancing that customer experience, and then walk us through this case study.
Will do. And because I'm not operating the slide deck, I will kind of prompt Bob
yes,
in the background
please do.
to basically move slides. So if you want to just go to the next slide. All right, and it's very hard to read. I don't expect everybody to read this, but I just do want to, one of the things that we had a gap we recognized, and the things that we practice here, we have a digital lab internally, which is kind of unique for a transportation company. that we bring our people, our drivers, we bring our customs people, our administrative folks into the room. Dave Cox is not allowed in that room because he drops grenades that are just crazy to take care of, but we service his needs. But for the most part, we do have people come in. As Richard said, we talk about it. So one of the gaps that we definitely had is how do we bring the road to the back office, right? Our drivers are the ones that are out there. They're on the road. We need to keep them safe. We also need to make sure that we get their feedback back into the administrative functions in the back end, right? We don't want them phoning. Again, that's disruptive to driving and so on. And how do we make our sustainability programs a little bit better by reducing paper? That was huge, right? So what we used to have is, and this is prior COVID days, our drivers would go out and in the city side for P&D or pickup and deliveries, they would bring back stacks and stacks. So you can imagine 60 drivers coming back. They leave at 6, they come back at 5 or 4, and they're bringing just stacks of paper back with them, PODs, BOLs, load confirmations, you name it. Family photos, the whole works, right? So we've got to go now and have a massive team. And we had, I think, around 14 people that would receive these and then just rush to scan all this stuff in the system. And of course, make mistakes, lose things. And then we said, well, how do we can make this more effective? So we built a tool with a partner called Radaro. And we integrated this and we made the tool and we relabeled it called Freight Focus, which now you can go to the next slide, Rob. And furthermore, sorry, another couple slides. We'll get to the one that shows the, keep going, right there. So, so we took our mobile, we took the advantages of tools we already had. So our drivers had phones already with them, iPhones in this case. Everybody likes theirs. We had Android, and it doesn't matter which, but we preferred iPhones in this case. And we said, hey, how do we bring that easily to the driver so that they can be fed the information, they could, relay back the information. So we made it super simple for them. They come in, we integrated to our truck management system. All our dispatchers and planners work on the back end. They push those manifests a day ahead into the drivers, let's say in their workloads. All the driver has to do is sign in the morning with their phone. They basically get their manifest. They get 9 routes, 6 routes, whatever it is, and off they go. And they are set on their pace. So they're following their workflow, super easy. They don't have to look at this. However, the system's tracking them. Now, when they get to their final destination, if you could just go to the next slide. So you can see this dispatch screen. One of the things that I asked our people, and this was a little bit different, I didn't want to bring the solution to them. I wanted to ask them what they wanted. And so one of our managers was just going crazy, right? Because he's got a fleet of 60 folks or more that he's got to plan for, and then he's got to maintain that all day long. And if things go wrong, he's receiving phone calls. He said, Dave, if I could have a screen that I could see my entire fleet on there with all pickups and deliveries, I would love it. Well, voila, that's exactly what's happening. So as the drivers are coming in, he's seeing the entire fleet. Ad hoc, he can see drivers starting, stopping. He can see when things might be late. We have customer notifications that can go out 20 minutes before the truck arrives. So back to the Amazon effect, this is even better than Amazon. Because now, Sarah, instead of seeing this written down and going, hey, I'll be there from anywhere from 8 to 5. No. I will be there at 3:22. And you could see this, actually the truck moving to your destination.
So I like that because sometimes with appliances, right? They're like, we're going to show up between 8 a.m. and 12. And I'm like, how do you plan around this?
Exactly. So this is really unique, I think, for at least LTL. There are a lot of tools out there, but we scoped many of them. So we kind of did a build and buy, not only from an integration, but also making sure that this suits our needs. So if you can just flip to the next slide. Rob, I think if you toggle.
Let's go to the ROI slide.
I'm sorry? Yeah, no, not yet. Just this one here. I just wanted to show that now it's synchronized with reporting. We have breadcrumbs that we can give to our clients. So let's say there's a dispute between a client. Sarah, you say that you didn't get your fridge. Well, we have a breadcrumb that shows the driver did come to your house, tried to drop the fridge off, but you weren't home. And
and or someone refused the delivery. This helps with disputes immensely, and it is some of the payback that we've gotten. From a customer experience, because we deal with a lot of brokers, this maybe sometimes doesn't make sense for them to watch the real time because it's actually the shipper that needs it and the consignee. However, it's there and it's proved immense. Scanning documents in this case also, I talked about scanning at the end of the, or receiving documents at the end of the day. Our drivers are now scanning real time. So our PODs are coming back as they're on the road. Our clearances are happening while they're on the road. So when the driver gets back, we've already cleared freight. Because the API document scanned comes right back into our truck or TMS system.
So I just want to let everybody know that the link to this case study is in the comments because this is fascinating, right? Because the POD has been a pain in everybody's butt for a very long time who works in this industry, because it's like you have to call this person to call this person to get this thing, and then you have to wait for them to send it to you. And like that just seems like it's way more efficient. Now, can you talk to us a little bit about what the ROI and benefit of this was? And then I know we want to talk a little bit about costs and things like that too. So
no worries. So Rob, if you flip to the next slide, I think, oh, sorry, I'll just quickly mention, here's the documents. We also customize, this is proprietary information. This is called Snap to Grid. So again, keeping it simple for our drivers, instead of them having to orient the document and take the picture, the system, he just hovers over the document and it will fit and blue screen it, basically image it, and then take the picture, but the picture becomes a PDF. So the technology, the dumb systems, the OCRs and everything can read it and process it through our bot process, which becomes super enhanced and optimized. Next slide.
There it is.
So here's the ROIs. I'll just touch on a few of them. One of the major pieces that we also saw benefit from, we talked about PODs. Yes, they were a problem. So when they were coming back, sometimes our drivers, they would give it to us, but maybe lose one under the seat. And this is revenue. When you think about it, at the end of the day, you got to collect revenue. And so how do you bill your client if you don't have the POD? Well, you got to go back, you try to get one. You got coffee stains, you got this, you got crumples, you got, scanned documents that are really a problem. Our CFO basically put some numbers behind it, said, guys, we could be losing $25,000 a month and leaving that on the table. Now I'm disclosing some information, but we've picked this back up now. 99.9% of our PODs are scanned and brought back from a delivery perspective. Huge improvement. Disputes have been minimized. Efficiencies, document clearances. As you can see some of the numbers there, and we can share those. You can look at those online. Those are some of the immediate ROIs that we got as payback. So this system, once we've implemented it within, I would say, and again, our CFO's not 100% telling me these numbers yet, but I could say probably within a year's time, this is paid back for itself.
Wow, those are amazing results, and I really liked seeing the design of the technology and how it actually works in each part of that. So thank you for sharing that. And I like the POD side, because like you said, coffee stains, there's grease from eating lunch. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. It's all on paper. And trying to get that paper back to the customer, I know in past experience has been just mind numbing. Like, it's just, you have to wait and wait and wait and wait. And like you said, that piece of paper is money to some people because they don't actually get paid necessarily on the product unless it's been delivered and you can prove that it has been delivered. So let's talk, because I know we've only got about 7 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. Mayor, I'm going to get to your question as well, but I want to talk about cost because I think it's a big factor, right? And so Dave, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to go to Richard to talk about some KPIs around technology. So Dave, how can technology and digitization help organizations sort of optimize those costs? We saw some of it in that ROI. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Absolutely. I think there's a huge potential for cost reduction. I would like to add that where the golden nugget becomes really effective from a cost reduction or cost opportunities and or even revenue gains is data. Because these systems don't lie, right? They're not human beings. They are processing information. The data that you collect and get back from it is golden because it's facts and it's not bad data, right? They're not mistyping stuff. It's event managed. So we can actually look, and this will lead right into the KPI pieces, but I can tell you that from my own experience, I think information sharing, not only internally, but bringing it to light. Now you're not having to go quiz somebody at their daily job and say, geez, you know, like, what are you seeing as a gap? Well, they'll tell you only from today what the gap is, but maybe not, you know, 14 days from now.
Yeah.
Customer experience, performance. You know, we've had some aha moments because we're tracking this information real time. We are not as good sometimes as we think we are, and where can we improve? So, you know, our customers also are someone that we need to share this data with, right? And so from a transparency perspective, we have data now that we could share with our customers. We can give them, you know, real life performance metrics. We can give them maybe information based on how much shipments and how much volumes have they done over these times. We can also see opportunities for sales. We can see now also, hey, how much effort are we reducing by putting these systems in, and why are our people still touching documents or doing other things? So you can have a good conversation with department heads and say, hey, maybe we can do some cost reduction here by putting a person somewhere where we really need them rather than having them do this stuff that they don't really need to do. So
really, really important. Yeah.
So
thank you, Dave.
There's my insights.
Awesome. So Richard, just really quickly before I get to Mayur's question, how should organizations choose the right KPIs when it comes to technology investments? Because I know that's on everybody's mind right now.
Yeah, the most important thing, and I think this is where organizations fight internally and don't get it right. They're focused on KPIs to maximize their business. We all know that's important. But how about an upside down approach where you focus your KPIs to maximize your customer success? How crazy is that, right? You know, if I use a simple example, flying an airline, telling me you didn't, you know, you weren't within the 3 hours, I'm not getting a refund for my missed flight. You know, it met their KPI, didn't meet my KPI. I missed everything on the tail end of that journey. So getting the KPIs right. And the other thing is the data that Dave alluded to is it allows you to normalize your staffing, which then you can better understand your productivity and your throughput. So now you can truly be internally focused because you do understand when work is coming in and when it's not coming in, and it allows you to deal with variation. So simply put, you nail the KPIs for the clients and you work backwards.
Amazing. Amazing advice. Now, Mayur, I think we did answer that question. Could you please advise on services that NDS offers through that case study? So what we're going to do is on my personal LinkedIn, I'm going to put the link to that case study so you can go and check that out. I'm also going to tag Dave and Richard so that they can answer that for you. But I know that we've got a video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you one thing that you want people to walk away from this discussion thinking about first. Then I'm going to let everybody know where they can find you. And then we're going to play a short clip for everybody. So Dave and Richard, really quickly, what's one thing that you'd like everybody to walk away from this discussion doing, thinking about, or planning for? Richard?
Think and invest long-term. If you think short-term, you'll never get there.
Awesome. Dave, that's quick.
Invest in tools that make a difference. Don't be the shiny, you know, the shiny nice things that are out there. Look at tools that will make a difference for your organization.
Awesome. Well, you can find out more at polaristransport.com. I've really enjoyed talking about the challenges, the opportunities. There's so much going on in cross-border trade that you need to have the right partners to do that with you. So a big thank you to all of you for listening, watching, and commenting. Now stay tuned because we are just about to play a clip for you for the end of the show. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Thanks, Richard and Dave.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.